It's 3:30 in the morning here in the capital, Tehran. You're watching Press TV's Top 5. Many thanks for joining us this hour. Now, the U.S. has pledged to maintain sanctions on Russia as long as Crimea remains under Moscow's rule. Now, this comes ahead of the anniversary of Crimea's breaking away from Ukraine. State Department Spokeswoman Jen Psaki called last year's referendum on Crimea a clear violation of Ukrainian law. Psaki also urged Moscow to end what she called the occupation of the peninsula. She accused the Russian president of forcibly seizing the territory by military force. Earlier, President Vladimir Putin said his actions in Crimea prevented the kind of violence now seen in eastern Ukraine. Last March, Crimeans voted in a referendum to rejoin Russia. They rejected the Western-backed government that took over power in Kiev. Let's cross over to Leesburg now. Joining us via Skype is Mike Billington. He's with the Asia desk of the Executive Intelligence Review. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Mr. Billington. Now, I'd like to get your opinion on the West's recent interest in Crimea all of a sudden. Why do you think that is? Is it just being used as an excuse to maintain the pressure and the rhetoric with regards to Russia?
Well, it's totally defensive. The fact is it's the anniversary, and the Russians released a video in which Mr. Putin very clearly stated that not only did they move immediately after the takeover by the neo-Nazi Maidan revolt against the elected government of Yanukovych, he and the military moved very quickly to prepare for returning Crimea to the homeland, to Russia. And he announced that they prepared for they put the nuclear forces on alert, already aware that the West was preparing for an attack on Russia. So the fact that they did this meant that the White House and its Wall Street backers and its spokesman had to come out with some sort of a belligerent lying attack on Russia. It's of note to say that when they say they're going to keep the sanctions until Russia gives Crimea back, which of course they never will, that they're only talking about the initial sanctions that were launched after the Crimea assault. The other sanctions that came in over what's going on in the Donbass could very well be released earlier if the Victoria Nuland faction in the Obama administration can be removed, which it must be very soon if we're not going to go into a thermonuclear confrontation with Russia, which could be an extinction event for the human race.
Well, speaking of a confrontation with Russia, do you think Crimea is now going to quickly become the new battleground between Russia and the U.S., militarily, diplomatically, or even economically speaking?
No. Even Ukraine is not the battleground. Ukraine, as Mr. Putin said earlier, if Ukraine hadn't happened, they would have found some other excuse. The reality, as Mr. Putin knows, and as Xi Jinping in China knows, and as really the entirety of the world knows, other than the EU and Obama, that we're dealing with the collapse of the Western financial system, the explosion of the BRICS nations' development policies on a global scale, and the Western financial interests who dominate, who completely control the Obama White House, are committed to breaking that up by forcing Putin and Xi Jinping and others to back down, or war, or threaten war. And this could break out into war. We're moving our forces right up to the border. We have 3,000 troops now in the Baltic states exercising right on the Russian border, openly threatening thermonuclear war. Part of the announcement today by Putin was that if the U.S. activates its current active policy, which is called prompt global strike, which is the insane notion that the West could take out the Russian or Chinese counterstrike nuclear forces. In other words, that we could win a nuclear war. We could launch a first strike and take out their counterstrike. That were any kind of, even conventional weapons, a prompt global strike attack be launched against Russia, they are prepared to unleash the full scale of their strategic nuclear weapons.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there for now. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Mike Billington with the Asia desk of the Executive Intelligence Review, joining us from Leesburg via Skype. Mr. Billington, it's always a pleasure talking to you on Press TV.